Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a fascinating and unexpected topic. Prince unveils the gay artists he secretly dated. The legendary Prince was known not only for his incredible talent, but also for his intensely private life. What many don't know is that behind his dazzling performances and seductive melodies, there were hidden romantic relationships with same-sex artists, stories that have remained untold until now. Who are these individuals, and why has everything been kept under wraps? Let's uncover the mystery together in this eye-opening story. Do you know any LGBTQ+ people? If you do, leave a number 1 in the comments. If not, comment with a 0. Each number helps us better understand and connect with each other. Don't forget to watch the video all the way through and hit that subscribe button to support the channel so we can bring you more exciting content. Thank you so much. For Prince, sex was more than just pleasure. It was a spiritual experience, a divine gift. A symbol of both liberation and inner conflict, Prince secretly loved 5 famous men. Yet none of them were brave enough to go public, not out of shame, but because the world had never been accepting enough of those who were different. There were no photos, no confessions, only fleeting glances, quiet nights, and songs filled with hidden messages. George Michael was the first to spark suspicion, but the names that followed were true revelations. There was the woman who danced with Prince in a fur dress at Studio 54. There was the man who always described him as a glittering ghost hovering over his head during recording sessions. There was the man who dared to embrace his truth, and another who never truly had the courage. This was a list Prince never wrote down, but he spoke of it softly through his gaze, his music, and his haunting silence. When George Michael first met Prince, he didn't look him directly in the eye, not out of shyness, but because Prince's gaze was so deep, so quiet, almost penetrating, it made anyone pause. There was something in the way Prince observed others that left you feeling completely exposed, not through words, but through his profound silence. Years later, someone from the MTV VMA's lighting crew in the late 80s recalled, "I'd never seen George so tense." George Michael seemed out of character that day. He was known for his infectious smile, his flamboyant confidence, and his ability to command a room. But backstage, just minutes before Prince arrived, George adjusted his sleeve 4 times, a seemingly trivial gesture that spoke volumes to those who knew him. The sleeve wasn't the issue. It was his way of concealing his true emotions. The tension was subtle, yet undeniable. It was a sign of respect between 2 superstars, but to those who were close to him, it was clear and indescribable nervousness, mixed with anticipation and something more profound. Prince entered, as he always did, quiet, almost enigmatic. He didn't speak much, didn't offer hugs or handshakes, but his presence alone was enough to shift the energy in the room. They exchanged only a few words, no physical intimacy, no lingering eye contact. But something lingered afterward, a strange, almost unspoken resonance. One of the production crew members couldn't help but blurt out, "I don't know what they were talking about, but it felt like something more than music." What began as a simple comment quickly turned into a rumor, a mystery that no one could confirm, but no one could deny.
Girls with their nails done now.
George was stepping out from the shadow of Wham's flamboyant, carefree image, carving out a space for himself as a serious, complex, and conflicted artist. Prince, on the other hand, had always been an unpredictable icon, genderless, wild, and solitary in the world he had built for himself. They weren't the same yet, They weren't as different as the public believed. Both led double lives, one on stage, where their emotions were carefully curated, and one in the shadows where they wrestled with their true selves, trying to simply exist. If anyone could truly understand the weight of constantly playing the lead role in one's own life, it would be them. But it's not just the moment they met that holds significance. It's what never followed, the silent, meaningful moments that only their music could express. In that silence, one can feel most deeply the loneliness and longing for acceptance that both of them quietly carried in their hearts. No one ever publicly spoke about their relationship. No photos were shared, no interviews were given about the secret meetings between Prince and George Michael. They never appeared together on stage or in any public projects. The only traces left behind were the subtle hints woven into their music. George's tender yet conflicted hit Father Figure was widely believed by fans to be influenced by Prince's unique style and spirit. This has sparked speculation about the true nature of the bond between these two legendary figures. The song Father Figure carries sublime harmonies, pleading sensual lyrics, and a musical atmosphere that lingers between desire and taboo. It all evokes the spirit of Prince's iconic album, Purple Rain. George Michael never openly admitted the influence, but he never denied it either. When asked about Prince's impact, he simply smiled and said, "I listen to Prince like I listen to myself, only more boldly." That cryptic response left fans to speculate endlessly. Music, it seemed, was the secret language that bound them together. Prince was exceptionally private. He never publicly mentioned George Michael, even though it was clear he was very familiar with the British star's music. But that silence wasn't a sign of indifference or disinterest. For Prince, silence was a way of protecting the most precious aspects of his life, a deep personal connection he didn't want anyone to invade. Those who truly knew him understood that his silence spoke volumes filled with profound meanings. If you were a famous artist like Prince, would you dare to publicly reveal your true gender or private love life? Comment yes if you're willing to live openly, or no if you believe it's still necessary to keep it a secret due to social pressures. Every share of yours is valuable, and who knows, you might inspire others. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next special stories. It's rumored that the two artists shared several phone conversations, though the details remain a mystery. A music producer revealed that George Michael once tried playing a guitar riff in Prince's signature style, curious to see how it felt. He recorded it and sent it to Prince on a cassette. Prince's response is unknown, but a few weeks later, George wrote an entirely new chorus as a musical reply. That chorus was never released and stayed locked away in George's personal notebooks, forgotten amid a difficult and turbulent period in his life. What's strange is that two individuals with enough power and talent to create a bold musical collaboration never did so, nor did they ever appear together in public. They never shared a stage, didn't collaborate on any songs, and left no indication to the media of a close relationship. This silence and avoidance only fueled curiosity, making people wonder if there was more between them than just friendship or professional camaraderie. Why maintain such a deep distance? A musician who worked with George Michael revealed that George once admitted feeling afraid of Prince, but not in a negative way. Instead, he feared losing himself when being too close to that uniquely powerful figure. George once confessed that if he got too close to Prince, he feared being swept away and losing his sense of self, as Prince was known for having no boundaries in relationships, while George was always drawn to the dangerous and mysterious. Perhaps they once shared a deep respect and admiration, or maybe it was a strong, unspoken friendship. Or perhaps it was a fleeting spark of affection, an emotion they couldn't or didn't dare express. What was undeniable, however, was the special bond between them, one that couldn't be easily defined in words or erased by time. Years later, when George reflected on the time he spent living in fear, hiding his true self and identity to avoid judgment, he was asked if he had ever loved someone he couldn't admit to publicly. George fell silent for a few seconds, gazed out the window, and then simply replied, "There are people I keep to myself because if I told them I was afraid, the world would destroy the most beautiful thing between us." That response not only left those who heard it feeling deeply moved, but it also sparked speculation about who the person was, though no one could ever say for certain. Prince left this world abruptly and mysteriously, just as he lived without explanation, no signs, only unanswered questions, and a timeless musical legacy. George Michael followed soon after, taking with him unfinished melodies and relationships that remain unspoken, unnamed. Their story lingers as a vast question mark in music history, a symbol of freedom, mystery, and profound emotions that only those who were part of it can truly understand. Their story, if it exists at all, can only be understood through feeling. A glimpse behind the scenes, a musical passage bearing the influence of the other, a long silence that, if listened to, closely resonates like a note in a wordless love song. And if, as someone once said, music is where the truest emotions can hide, then perhaps Prince and George Michael loved each other, understood each other, and chose not to speak of it in order to preserve its raw beauty. Not everything needs to be known. Some connections can only exist when held in ambiguity between light and dark, between a song and an untold story. Speculation began when Prince and Sylvester James Jr. stood close together, though there was no concrete evidence to support it. No one witnessed any clear moments, but that ambiguity only added to their enigmatic allure. It felt like an unwritten story, something deeply real but hidden in the shadows. And sometimes it was the silence that spoke the loudest.
I think the girls with their nails done now.
When the two appeared on the same dance floor, bathed in the sparkling lights and quiet atmosphere of a late night, it wasn't the music that drew people's attention. It was an odd, indescribable feeling, a mix of curiosity and doubt, as if witnessing something both familiar and too strange to fully understand. They stood close to each other intimately, yet worlds apart. It was the 80s, the height of Prince's career, his aura glowing brightly everywhere. Meanwhile, Sylvester stood as a different kind of icon, not just on stage, but also as a voice for those who couldn't speak for themselves. Sylvester was known as the Queen of Disco, yet he never allowed gender to define him. He was simply Sylvester, a one-of-a-kind personality with a style that couldn't be replicated. It was this uniqueness that drew Prince in, not through romantic gestures or loud displays, but through silent admiration and an undeniable charisma. In an industry rife with pressure and tight boundaries, Sylvester became a symbol of freedom, showing that one could remain true to oneself without compromise. He taught Prince that there was no need to choose sides, that it was possible to be authentic and still rise above it all. Perhaps deep in Prince's heart at that time there was a silent voice, a yearning to break free from all constraints. They met at Studio 54, a place where differences were welcomed without question. Their words weren't needed for everyone to understand who they were. Simply standing beside each other, they created their own story filled with hidden meanings and depth like stars quietly shining in the night. Though it lasted only a brief hour on the dance floor, that moment was enough to spark hundreds of fragmented stories in the hearts of fans. Afterward, the two mysteriously vanished from the crowd. They didn't enter the dressing room, didn't get in a car, and no one saw them head to the basement or the roof. The silence and mystery surrounding that encounter still linger, becoming an unforgettable piece of a brilliant era, one filled with brilliance, yet shrouded in unsolved secrets. They simply vanished, leaving many puzzled. I remember Prince, in a purple velvet suit, standing next to Sylvester in a white fur coat that reached his ankles, recalled one witness who worked there, though it was uncertain whether it was true or simply a memory blurred by alcohol. They didn't speak, just stood there in quiet solidarity. Yet that silence made the entire room feel as though it had frozen, creating a strange electric atmosphere, something everyone felt, but no one dared to name. It captivated everyone present, not because of any boldness or display, but because they didn't need to be bold. There was a mysterious gray area between them where imagination and fear intertwined. Funk and disco, two genres that seemed worlds apart, came together magically through these two men. Prince's funk was defined by sharp electric guitars and vibrant, bold screams, while Sylvester's disco sound was smooth, yet powerful like a preacher delivering a sermon in a musical church. This blend not only captivated listeners, but also forged a silent, profound connection between them, one that was felt but never spoken. That unspoken connection led many in the music industry to believe a collaboration was inevitable, but it never materialized. No joint recordings, no songs released, and no tours together. This silence only deepened the rumors, with many speculating that the absence of anything concrete was the clearest sign. In fact, what didn't happen between them became the most unforgettable part of their story, creating an indescribable allure around the bond between these two legends. A subtle yet often overlooked detail is that after that night, Prince's performance style began to change dramatically. The sheer shirts, the bold eye makeup, the long fluid movements, each of these elements seemed to reflect a quiet acknowledgement of Sylvester's influence and style. Prince never mentioned it, but the passage of time spoke louder than any words. Sylvester never publicly addressed that night either, but in a 1982 interview when discussing his musical inspirations, he left a poignant quote that many have since pondered. There are people who simply by passing through our lives leave an indelible mark that lasts a lifetime. At the time, no one thought much of it, but looking back now, that sentence feels like a sealed letter sent straight to the listener's heart. Years later, long after both of them have stepped away from the peak of their performances, people still talk about them as part of that unforgettable era. But what haunts people isn't what did happen, it's what never did. Maybe they shared a room, a slow dance, an awkward conversation under the dim yellow lights, or maybe they simply stood there, silent, breathing in the same space. The silence between these artists who lived for sound became the loudest echo of an era when being true to oneself came with a price. Two distinct black individuals challenging social and gender stereotypes, choosing empathy without needing to name it. Perhaps that is what made them great beyond any album ever created. The truth is elusive. There is no tape, no confession, only the unspoken bond that defined them.
I think the girls with their nails done now.
But in the minds of those who lived through that time amid the haze of cigarette smoke, the dim lights and the fleeting glances they exchanged, something very special remained. It was as if even for a moment they had witnessed a silent love. If there was true love between Prince and Sylvester, it wasn't the public displays, but the silence of that night when two individuals dared to be themselves in a world still unready to embrace differences. It was a love that was profound, wordless, but undeniably powerful. Before they met, Rufus Wainwright had felt something strange, vague, yet undeniable. Every time he sat at the piano, a purple hue seemed to quietly blend into the melody like an uninvited ghost. Rufus never gave the feeling a name, simply saying, "I always imagined Prince watching me from a velvet cloud." The statement might have sounded like a joke, but those familiar with Rufus's music knew it was more than just a flight of fancy. The strangest part is that there has never been a photo of them together, nor any song released or album notes mentioning their names. That silence only deepens the allure and mystery surrounding their connection. It is this very silence that has crafted a poetic story, a wordless musical memory that lingers forever in the hearts of fans like a beautiful legend that can only be felt, not described. But industry insiders who frequented the Los Angeles studios in 2006 tell a different story. A chance encounter, yet one that resonated for more than a decade. To be honest, nothing was clear, says the producer who was there that day. But the atmosphere in the room changed as if two storms from different directions had met not by collision, but in a way that brought everything to a halt. Prince was an almost surrealist icon, always using mystery as his weapon. Rufus, younger and unique in his own way, was still struggling to find his voice in a world that remained cautious of those who dared to be authentic. They weren't easy people to connect with, but that led to a deeper understanding between them. The story of that day in the studio has never been fully revealed, but what is known is that Prince showed up for a few hours, listened to Rufus's demo, said very little, and then disappeared. That brief encounter left Rufus with a strange feeling like he wasn't being observed to be judged, but to be understood. Many fans have wondered why, if there was such mutual respect and understanding between them, there was no musical collaboration. No joint recordings, no funk classical ballads, nothing more than rumors. That question remains a mystery. Prince was known for never doing anything predictable, with many of his projects existing only in the memories of him and those close to him. Perhaps he believed the connection was meant to exist only in that moment, with no need for it to continue beyond that. It's also possible that Prince saw a version of himself in Rufus, too honest, too vulnerable to want to pull Rufus into his complicated world. Rufus, in turn, almost wrote a song called Little Prince, pouring out deep admiration and intense personal feelings. Even though they never collaborated, the subtle chemistry between them lingered, leaving an indelible mark on those who understood the untold stories hidden behind their respective auras. But he gave it up for one reason: I was afraid it would be misunderstood, and I couldn't bear that anymore. No one asked why, but those who knew Rufus's personal history, the internal struggles between his true self and the public image, would understand. There were things he chose to keep private, not out of shame, but because if revealed, they might lose the beauty they held in his heart. One of the reasons the Prince-Rufus rumor has endured is the haunting subtlety they both exude in their music. Rufus's lingering low notes, his soft, fragile vibrato clinging to something unattainable, strongly echo Prince's purple funk shadow. Both were artists unafraid to put vulnerability at the forefront, unmasking their deepest emotions without hesitation. Neither of them needed pity, but neither tried to act stronger than they truly were. Perhaps that's why their connection, if there was one, was so difficult to define. Neither of them belonged to the world where names were attached to sell records or attract attention. They didn't need labels or to call each other names to confirm anything. Just a shared glance for a few minutes was enough to carry that feeling for years. When Prince passed away, Rufus was one of the few young artists who chose silence. No open letters, no tribute songs, no public memorials. It wasn't until nearly a year later at a small concert in Vienna that Rufus quietly played an unreleased track and said, "I was going to call this Little Prince, but I never had the courage," and then said nothing more. That statement seemed to preserve the mystery and depth of the silent yet profound bond between two individuals who dared to be themselves in a complex world. No name, no framework, just a point of contact. But like all true artists, Prince and Rufus understood that some connections are meant to remain legends because only as legends can they transcend words and images, living forever in the listener's consciousness. And who knows, in Rufus's later music, as the sound settles like a mist, a subtle purple tinge may emerge as a reminder of a 2006 afternoon in a Los Angeles studio where the two artists needed very few words but heard each other deeply. Next is RuPaul Andre Charles. RuPaul once mentioned on a show that he saw Prince looking at him from afar, but he quickly changed the subject, leaving the audience unaware of what had just been said. Meanwhile, Prince has never mentioned RuPaul in any interview or statement. That absolute silence seems to suggest that any questions about each other are simply not worth answering. The strange thing is, they are so similar, and it is this similarity that prevents them from connecting. RuPaul is openly gay, living his truth, and becoming a symbol of sexual liberation, forcing the world to confront the truth about what was once considered deviant. RuPaul is an open book, but Prince was different. Throughout his life, he kept people guessing about his sexuality. Was he gay? How much of his image was real, and how much was just art? Prince never confirmed nor denied anything, using ambiguity as a veil to protect his private life. His silence on the matter became part of his mystique, leaving fans and the media to speculate endlessly. It is that mystery and silence that makes their relationship even more intriguing, unclear, yet heavy with significance. Two incredibly talented individuals navigating the turbulent and often stressful music world chose to keep their unsolved secrets to themselves. And perhaps that's exactly how they continue to exist, as immortal icons living forever in the hearts of fans and etched into the fabric of music history. One is the mirror, the other is the shadow. Rumor has it that at that year's Met Gala, Prince's stylist stopped him from entering at the same time as RuPaul, not wanting the media to photograph them in the same frame. While there's no hard evidence, industry insiders at the time confirmed that Prince was deeply wary of any labels, especially those tied to his community. Not because he hated it, but because he feared being pigeonholed, misunderstood, afraid of losing control of his own image. An image that Prince had spent his entire career crafting, preserving, and protecting as the last defense between himself and the world. It wasn't just prudence, it was a silent but powerful obsession, a boundary no one was allowed to cross. While RuPaul chose to live his truth-shattering gender boundaries and social stereotypes, Prince opted to keep his lines vague, always just out of reach. No one could define him, and that was how he survived.
girls with their nails done.
The story began to surface more widely after many years of silence, when a former member of RuPaul's team accidentally shared a memory in a podcast. A brief fragment, but enough to reignite the curiosity and regret that many still carry in their hearts. According to this person, one night backstage at an event, RuPaul sat silently for a long time, just staring at the spot where Prince had just been. It was as if he were trying to listen to a song that had stopped playing, yet still lingered in his heart. That's their biggest contrast. RuPaul chose to embrace both the spotlight and the ridicule, accepting mockery in exchange for freedom. Prince, while also eccentric, gender-fluid, and challenging norms, always maintained a layer of fog. He only revealed what he wanted others to see, never allowing them to touch his truest self. Someone once asked, "Does Prince hate RuPaul?" But perhaps the more accurate question is, does Prince fear looking at RuPaul because it's a mirror, a reflection with no velvet covering anything? And maybe what he truly feared wasn't being labeled, but seeing himself in it and not being ready to admit it. RuPaul never expressed blame. On another occasion, when asked about artists he wished he had worked with, he paused, then simply said, "Prince. But I guess some connections are too fragile to be forced. A connection is too delicate to be forced." A gentle but profound acknowledgement of the behind-the-scenes world of show business. These fleeting, unnamed encounters happen often, but it's rare when a casual connection leaves such a lasting impression. Maybe it's because it strikes a deep chord, one familiar to many queer people of color, the painful decision between being accepted and being authentic. RuPaul chose the harder path. Prince followed the one lit by fame. Yet despite their different journeys, both stood alone in their own way like distant lights scattered across a sprawling city. No one can say whether Prince might have reached out to RuPaul if he'd lived longer, maybe just to offer a simple "I see you." But the world doesn't make space for what-ifs. What lingers is an unfinished story, a silent glance, and a bond that was never spoken aloud. Recently, in a remix of one of his older tracks, RuPaul quietly slipped in a soft funk groove, a sound unmistakably tied to Prince. No one ever said it out loud, but those who followed both understood it was a late farewell, an unspoken apology, and perhaps Prince's quiet way of closing a chapter that was never named. Not everyone who crossed paths with Prince stayed close for long. Among the hundreds who claimed to know him, only a handful truly left a lasting imprint. Germaine Stewart was one of the rare few, not just because of his rising fame, but because there was something truly indescribable between him and Prince, a connection that went beyond words. There are no well-known photos, no public interviews to confirm it. Yet industry veterans who were around Minneapolis in the early 80s still speak of it as undeniable. For a brief time, Prince and Germaine were inseparable. From the studio to rehearsals, there were even whispers that the two shared a modest apartment in Uptown, where Prince is said to have written some of the early tracks for his 1999 album. Germaine was the kind of person who could easily go unnoticed. Quiet, thoughtful, gender-fluid in style, but never flashy. He didn't make statements. He simply showed up with a soft smile and an oversized suit. His eyes always seemed to be somewhere far away. Germaine was openly gay, but in a way that many didn't fully see until after he was gone. It wasn't that he was hiding anything, he just didn't feel the need to announce what to him was simply a given. With Prince, things were more complex. And that's where the tension started. They met at a crucial point in their lives, each stepping into their own. Prince was approaching his breakthrough with 1999, while Germaine was beginning to forge her own path after parting ways with Shalimar.
Girls with their nails done.
They bonded over a shared love of funk and classic hits, but also pushed boundaries challenging gender norms in both style and performance. Beneath their common ground, however, lay a quiet tension neither openly acknowledged. Germaine embraced a gentle, easygoing approach, while Prince sought total control over everything around him. That difference became a slow-burning divide, growing clearer and harder to bridge as time went on. Germaine used music to speak her truth, best captured in her hit, "We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off," a powerful anthem of emotional freedom beyond physical or societal expectations. The song isn't just a statement, it's a challenge to the pressures that try to shape how people live. Prince, on the other hand, also explored themes of desire, freedom, and breaking norms, but he always maintained tight control over his narrative. Every rebellious image was carefully crafted, leaving nothing to chance. Within just a few months, their relationship started to unravel for reasons no one fully understands. Industry insiders recall a moment when Prince suddenly cut Germaine's vocals during a recording session, offering no explanation. On another occasion, Germaine brought Prince a new demo hoping for feedback, but Prince quietly got up and left the studio without a word. Maybe the song was too personal, or maybe Prince saw a part of himself in it and wasn't ready to face it. Rumor has it they clashed over musical direction, but those closest to them say the real issue ran much deeper, rooted in their differing philosophies. Germaine wanted Prince to be more open and honest, while Prince saw that as an intrusion into the private world he'd carefully built, guarded by countless defenses. One lived openly as herself, the other lived so no one could truly know him. Both were lonely, yet neither found comfort in that shared solitude. They haven't appeared together in interviews since. Germaine rarely mentions Prince, and when he does, his voice softens, carrying a quiet sadness. "Prince is one of the most intelligent and elusive artists I've ever known," he once said. The words carry both admiration and regret, a tribute to a beautiful connection that couldn't endure. "I think he understood me," Germaine once said, "but he probably didn't want to face what I represented." This revealed the complicated nature of their relationship, an incomplete understanding, a gap too wide to close. Years later, an anonymous producer who worked with both shared that Germaine had written an unreleased song called "Invisible Man." Many assumed it was about hidden gay love, but Germaine insisted it was about Prince, a brilliant yet unreachable figure.
Girls with their nails done.
As usual, Prince has never commented on this. He neither confirmed nor denied it, remaining completely silent, which many see as the most heartbreaking part of their story. Because no matter how beautiful a connection is, if it goes unacknowledged, it's almost as if it never happened. Prince's secretive nature made his deepest relationships just as elusive and unpredictable as he was. When Germaine passed away, someone asked if Prince had sent flowers or condolences. No one knew for sure. There was no public record, but a source at Paisley Park said Prince dressed all in white that day, shutting the studio door tight. He didn't see visitors, didn't record, didn't speak. Instead, he played an old demo on repeat, untitled, with a slightly imperfect vocal, but to those who knew him, it was unmistakably Germaine. Maybe that was Prince's way of saying goodbye, quietly, privately, unseen, but still deeply present. Beneath the dazzling lights of pop and funk, Prince was more than an artist. He was a symbol of the undefinable. These 5 relationships reveal different facets of him: the light and the shadow, the open and the secret. They aren't meant to judge, but to show how great talent can sometimes come with deep loneliness. The connections with George Michael Sylvester, Rufus Wainwright, RuPaul, and Germaine Stewart aren't just rumors. They stand as quiet proof of genuine bonds between people who dared to love even if they couldn't always love freely or fully. That relationship, though quiet, speaks to a complex journey where people like Prince must wrestle with themselves while holding on to fragile connections in a world that often rejects difference. It's that very ambiguity, that mystery, that shapes his lasting allure, leaving a deep imprint on the hearts of those who knew and loved him. And that's all the names that Prince was associated with in surprising secret relationships. Although he never made it public while he was alive, these behind-the-scenes revelations show a very human, very private side of an artist who always lived outside the box. Prince was not only a musical icon, but also a symbol of freedom in love and identity. If you find this topic interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next interesting stories. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.